You may not have, I don't know if you understood all the French, probably not. But she translates that. But in the beginning, she has a very wonderful sense of humor. And so she says she's going to read these two questions. Not that they are very intelligent or bright or anything. She says it in French, so it sounds a little sweeter. And it's rather lovely, you know. And then at the end she says, let us hope that the work we are working at can be accomplished, you know, in the next few years. For the moment, it doesn't seem that much has been accomplished, which is very sweet. I met her in '62. I don't know when this tape was done. I think it was done earlier. But she still had that power and quality, because after '62, in fact, just before I left, she used to come every morning to the balcony. There was a lower balcony. And at 6:15, you were invited to come at any point and be there for her blessing. Her blessing was a quiet blessing. She would hold on to the balcony and look over the people that were there, and sometimes smile, and sometimes, you know, you would feel. And each person, although I didn't speak to every person, each person felt that she was looking particularly at them, you know? And it was like she had that quality of the Mona Lisa painting, if you've seen it. You can walk past it and her eyes follow you. And that, and of course it isn't true because her eyes are this way. But there's a quality of mystique quality which makes that happen. And I tell you a little tiny story which is amusing in regards to that. When I first arrived at the ashram, I was told that, this was late in the afternoon, I was told I could see the mother at that balcony. So, having never been to the Far East, and I awoke very early. And I found myself walking in flip-flops, as you're wearing, and in an Indian outfit. I came to India dressed as an Indian. I didn't come dressed as a Westerner, because I had gone to Ceylon previously. For that, well, I'll tell you that another time. It's a big story. But so there I was at 4:30 in the morning, walking in the dark in India towards the ashram, central ashram property. And it was so remarkable because the smell of India, the atmosphere, the one or two rickshaw wallahs, you know, these are the people who you know what a rickshaw is. These are the, well, in those days they still had people who didn't use bicycles. They ran by foot, so they were running, you know, by foot. Anyway, I came to the area where they said you could wait for Mother, and I looked up at the balcony, and being the egotist that I was and am, I thought to myself, I want to be in the very most perfect spot for her to see me. You know, I wasn't thinking about anything else. So I chose a spot which I thought, oh, this is it. And I was the only person there at that point because everybody came a little later. So I stood there and found myself very quietly going into meditation. And I was there probably an hour before she came. most people came 5 minutes, 10 minutes before she came, but I was there for a long time. So I was in deep meditation, and suddenly I felt a shoulder push me. And I looked over, and there was a young man with a beard, and I wasn't an Indian. I suspected he was an American, but I didn't know. And what I realized, he didn't say a word. I had taken his spot, which he had always been at. So he looked at me, and I looked at him, and there was this slight smile, you know, because he realized why I was there, and I realized why he was pushing me. And, of course, I didn't move out of the way. Needless to say, and happy to say, we became very, very dear friends. And that was in 1962. We're still very dear friends. And there's much to tell about him. His name was, his Indian name was Narad. And his American name was Richard Eggenberger. Is that right, Eggenberger? Yes, yeah. Anyway, he's been to Matagiri many times now, and we have a long, long history of knowing each other. Well, I went to India because I had heard Mother's voice in 1960 on a tape at a woman's house by the name of Eleanor Montgomery, who was a very, very delicate and very important person in the yoga at that time. And she was someone who was in the haute couture, and she was someone who was a very kind of elegant Fifth Avenue lady.
A great international Vogue.
Yes, she was, exactly. And we were friends, we knew each other, and she had invited Eric and I to a darshan day, that's a celebration. And she played a tape of Mother. And when I heard Mother's voice, as you just heard, as I'd never heard before, seemingly never heard before, I was so awakened to the fact that I knew her voice. I mean, it was a voice that was so familiar to me, as if it were, couldn't be more familiar than if it were a family member. So I turned to Eric. We were sitting on a couch, and I said, "Oh, I know her voice so well. Oh, so well. I must go and meet her." And that's in 1960, when I decided at that point to go to meet this remarkable person that I've heard so much about. But a part of my nature has always been, I have total faith, but I want to be proved everything. And that, of course, has something to do with Gurdjieff, but I'll speak of that another time. So when I went to the ashram, my attitude, I'm jumping, but you'll have to follow my jumping. I was told by a very dear friend of mine that going to the ashram, the most auspicious and mystical way is to go by boat. So I thought, well, this I will do. I had two very dear friends, one Canadian and one English, who lived in London. One was a movie director, Cyril Frankel is his name, and the other was Stephen Andrews, who was a Canadian painter, very fine painter. And so I told them I was coming, and they said, "Oh yes, come." And at that point in their lives, they were very, very wealthy, which was nice. And they owned two gigantic townhouses, one right next to the other, in a very posh section of London. And so I was their guest. And when I arrived at their house, I said, "Where are you going to put me up?" Of course, there were hundreds of rooms all over the place. And they said, "Well, the Maharishi Mahesh just left this morning. They were the first Westerners that brought the Maharishi Mahesh to England. And they said, you'll have the room he had and the bed he had. We feel that's proper." And I said, "Oh, well, that's very nice." And this was right off of a garden in the back. And so the second day I was there, I called Cook's, you know, the famous travel agency. And I said, "Do you have a boat that I can take from London to India?" And they said, "Well, the P&O, we go to Ceylon, and then from Ceylon you can take a ferry boat across to India." I said, "That's fine." And I said, "Can I put in a request for a reservation? I'd like to leave in a week." And they said, "Oh, sure." And I said, "Well, I'd like a room, you know, stateroom." And I said, "How much is it?" And the figure I will just guess at, because I don't remember, something like £100. And I said, "That's fine, and put it under my name, Sam Spanier, and I'll come in the next day or so and pick up the ticket and pay for it." And so they said, "Thank you," and we'd be happy. And so a day or two later, I went down to Cook's, and I walked into the agency, which was quite elegant. It was a big place. And a man in a tuxedo walked up to me and said, "May I help you, sir?" And I said, "Yes, I'm here to get my tickets. My name is..." And he said, "Yes, just 1 second, you know." And then I saw another man in a tuxedo coming towards me. And he said, "Oh, Mr. Spanier," he said, "how nice of you to come. And we do have your ticket. But the young man who quoted the price to you was an absolutely new employee. And he made a terrible error. It's not £100, it's £300. Well, I looked at him and smiled, and I didn't say anything, fortunately. And he said, "But we at Cook's feel that since he had given you that price and you had accepted it, we will respect that." So I thought, isn't this remarkable? Because I didn't have that much money, and I realized that the doors were beginning to open. When you're going to do something that is right, everything always aids you. The divine wants you to do it, you know. So I thanked them very much, and I gave them the £100, and I took my ticket, and I went back to my friends and spent a very glorious week with them, because they knew everybody in London. You know, the one was a director and the other one was a painter. So I was shuttled all over the place and met millions of people, and it was very pleasant. And they were also seekers. Stephen, Stephen is the one, well, you don't know this, and I'll get back to him another time. Stephen is the person who introduced me to Gurdjieff in 1949 in Paris. And if you want to know that little story, I can put it in at the moment. Yes, I'll tell you. I'll tell you that. You know, but I mean, I can go back in this way. You can have to stop me if you want me to stop.
Why don't we go? Let's finish the story of you going to India.
Oh, okay.
And then we'll take Stephen and...
Oh, all right. Very good.
I'm making notes.
Well, I got on the... I had to go to Southampton. I got on the boat, and I wasn't on the boat for more than 20 minutes. I was sitting in the central... I suppose it was a central tea room or something. You know, the English are always having tea. It seems to be a fix-all. No matter what you need or what you want, they serve you tea. So I sat down in this room, and it was a circular room, And at the other side of the room, quite a distance away, was a plumpish, blonde, reddish hair, green-blue eyes woman who must have been in her 60s, which was, at that point, much older than I was. And I was having my tea.
How old were you, Sam?
That was 1962. I was 25. I was about 30-something. And this woman had such a presence, and she said, and I looked to my left, and I looked to my right, and there was nobody sitting there. And I thought, she's asking me how I am, as if we were old friends. So I did a little pantomime, and I said, and she said, yes. So I thought, this is very strange. So I got up, and the boat was on its way, and I walked up to this charming woman, and I said, are you speaking to me? And she said, yes. And I said, but I have sometimes forgotten people's names, but I never forget a face. I said, I'm a visual person, and I really don't. And she said, well, we know each other very, very well, and I know you very well, but not from this life. So I thought, oh my God, it's already begun. Anyway, she was a mystic, and she was a psychic, and she claimed that she knew me from a previous life, and she was so happy to see me again. And mind you, we were going to be on this boat for 2 weeks. So we became very, very good friends. She was a charming woman, really a charming woman. And she told me all different kinds of things about my previous life. And she said I'd had many lifetimes, and I was a remarkable being. And she just carried on in most charming way. Anyway.
Did she make a connection to you and the mother?
No, but she knew that I would be involved in mystical work and search. And when she said, and where are you going this time? You know, as if we'd been doing this before. And I said, well, I'm going to meet a woman who is referred to as the mother, and she's a remarkable being, I've been told, and I really feel I must speak with her and meet with her. And she said, oh, I would love to join you. So I looked at her and I said, by all means, you come with me. I'll be very happy. She said, oh, my husband just died. I have to go back to Australia. There's all this things that have to be accomplished. And I said, well, I'll tell you where I am if you want to come, you know. Anyway, it didn't come about that she came, but there were many very interesting people on the ship. It was a time of English life where a lot of the people were going to Australia to immigrate. They were English people. Mm-hmm. And I met all kinds of interesting people.
Was there anyone else on the boat who was going to Pondicherry to meet the mother? Or
no, there wasn't. But there were, actually, I met one Indian man who said to me, oh, where are you going? And I said, well, I'm going to Ceylon, Colombo, and then to India. He said, skip Colombo. You go to India. Colombo is nothing. India is everything. Oh, my gosh. Anyway, I can tell you a little tiny bit about it. Well, it was a 2-week trip. I started off wearing a coat, and each day it got warmer and warmer because we were going, you know. And one of the remarkable experiences I had, one evening about 11:30, 12 o'clock, I decided to go up on the top deck. And it was a glorious night. It was, you know, the sky was kind of a royal deep blue almost. It wasn't fully black. And the stars were incredible. And I looked up and I saw a star that had a force field that I knew. It was one of these mystic. And I looked at the star and I left my body and I went to the star. I stood there in that, whatever it meant, and looked down from there and saw the speck of a spot on the speck of a boat. And I had consciousness in it, and I said, that is me down there. I mean, it was millions of miles, and suddenly I felt myself return and go back into this form. How long it took, it probably didn't take more than 2 minutes, you know. And I stood there in a state of joyfulness, and I thought, nobody in the world is going to believe this. I ain't telling this story because nobody will believe that I left my body and went to a star and then came back and went. But I'm telling it now, but this happened in 62. Well, the boat finally came to Colombo, and I was actually going to go around the world, because the travel agent that sold me my ticket said, when you, or was that in 64 that I went around the world? I've forgotten now. I won't get.
Flew around the world.
Yeah, flew around the world. Yeah, probably I'm getting that a little confused. But anyway, I was told that I had a very small bag, because I knew in India, you know, and also, as I told you, I was already dressed in Indian clothes, which I bought in Ceylon. And in Ceylon, I started to have all these strange experiences. I'll just tell you one. I came down, I was staying at the YMCA.
In Ceylon.
In Ceylon. And they didn't, oh, so many stories. I came down the first day and I was sitting in a chair, and suddenly a man, a gray-haired man, came and he lied down, prostrated himself and touched my feet. And I looked at him and I thought, oh my God, what is going on? And he said, I've been waiting for you, finally have come. And I said, are you sure you have the right person? And he was talking mystically. He said, you're my teacher, you're my teacher. I said, you're mistaken. You're mistaken. I am not your teacher. Get up from there. Get up from there. Stand up, stand up, stand up. I am going to a teacher myself. I'm not your teacher. He said, oh, you are, you are. Well, anyway, needless to say, I thought, oh, my God, I'm in the Far East. I don't know what could happen here. But
did you see him again?
no, I didn't want to see him again. I didn't want to have people following me and all of that kind of stuff. No, 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 no. I don't have that in my nature. There's a lot of little stories which I'll skip. They're all to do with Ceylon and Colombo. But one very sweet thing, oh, no, I have to jump back again. So when I was going off the boat, and when you come into the harbor of Colombo, the ship is too big to come into the harbor, so you have to get off and take a little small boat to the point. And I was carrying this little bag of mine, and one of the men who work on the ship said, oh, I'll take that for you. You don't have. I said, it's not heavy. I'll carry it. Oh, no, no, no. I'll arrange it for you. So I gave it to him. And I got into the boat, and there was just one other man in the boat, and he was from Life magazine. And we got to the pier, and I waited there for my little bag. 1 hour went by, no bag. 2 hours went by, no bag. And I was getting impatient, and it was hot. And the man said, "You've never been to the Far East, have you?" I said, "No, it's my first time." He said, "Everything that happens in the Far East has a meaning. If you learn that now from this little incident, it'll be a great lesson for you." So I don't know if I learned it, but I understood that what he was trying to tell me. Suddenly a young Ceylonese boy came up to me and he said, "Can I help you?" You know, and they always have this big smile. They're always kind of sweet looking. And I said, "Well, I'm waiting for my bag and I don't know where I'm going and I have to go someplace very reasonably." And he said, "Why don't you try the YMCA?" I said, "I will try, I will." And he said, "What is your name?" And I told him my name. He said, "Thank you so much." And that was the end of that. I went to the YMCA and they said, "We're terribly sorry, we don't have any room." And I looked and I said, "Oh, you must have something. I have no reservations anywhere." And so he looked at me and he said, "Well, I have one room. The gentleman is not coming until 12 this evening. There is a double, 2 beds. Would you be willing to share?" I said, "I certainly will." So I went into a room, went to sleep, expecting some strange person to come, who finally did, about 5 after 12, come in. The next morning, he turned out to be somebody in the Indian government who was having trouble with his wife, and he decided that I was supposed to solve all his problems, and he told me all of the problems. And after telling me everything, he said, "Whatever you tell me, I'll do." And I thought, I don't believe this. That, you know, into myself, I said, "Don't believe this." And so I told him something. I don't remember what I told him. Anyway, I'd skip now, and finally I'm leaving Colombo. I stayed a few days there. And I get to the train, because you have to take a train that takes you to a ferry boat, that the ferry boat takes you across to India. I'm standing at the train. Mind you, I'm dressed as an Indian. And I had black hair then, by the way. And I was fairly suntanned. I didn't look like an American typically, but I didn't look like an Indian either. I looked possibly a Northern Indian. I could have, because I have a Semitic look to my face. And so an elderly man and woman came and they said, "Are you going to the ferry boat?" I said, "Yes, I am." "Will you be so kind? Please take care of our son." The son was 6'2". He was 19 years old. He could have picked me up and carried me. And "Please, you take," "Oh, we looked up and down and we found you and we know you're the right person. Please take care of us." And so I said, "All right." So anyway, I became the guardian for this little, I was going to say little boy, but it wasn't at all a little boy. So,
Now, is this the route that the mother came when she first came on boat? Did she go
oh,
from
I
Ceylon,
have
or-
no idea. Yeah, I doubt it. I doubt it. And I'm just going to tell you one.
She didn't go to Ceylon. She went to Madras.
Madras.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or maybe even directly to Pondicherry.
Because it was the French.
I thought she did go directly to
Right,
Pondy.
she did.
It's
But-
French to French,
Right.
coming from UK.
Well, there are many, many stories, but I'll just tell you just the one thing. When I arrived on the soil of India, I felt an incredible heat vibration come into my whole body. I'm just, you know, and I was wearing open flip-flops, you know. And I knew that this land was very special and I could feel it. And I got on to the train. I didn't, as I say, make any reservations, so I was in third class with everyone else, and there were two little seating arrangements, and there was an old man who was a devotee of Krishna. His hair was all shaved, and he had white signs here, and Shiva, I beg your pardon. And then there was a bundle of rags in the corner, and I got on into the compartment, and I sat opposite him, and I was seated cross-legged, and he looked at me, and he didn't know. Again, you know, I was wearing Indian clothes, and I had this dark hair, and he said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "I'm from America." He said, "What is your religion?" And I thought to myself, to be very honest with him, you know, because I had been practicing yoga, and so I said, "I'm a Hindu." I wasn't trying to put him off. And he said, "Oh, you're a Hindu." He said, "Is your mother a Hindu?" I said, "No." "Is your father a Hindu?" I said, "No." "Mother and father aren't Hindu, but you are a Hindu." Ah, he went like that. With that, he took his elbow and pushed it into these rags. And out of what looked like a bunch of old rags came this little old wizened woman who was his wife. You would never know that anybody was there. It would just look like a bunch of rags. And he repeated that whole story again to her. Anyway, for whatever reason, he decided he was going to be my father and take care of me. He had a paternal. So I was very thirsty, and the train was waiting, and people were yelling food things up and down, and te, you know, and you know, millions of sounds going and coming. So I looked out the window, and I had been given a gift of a canteen, the kind that you see in the Second World War, you know, around one line. And they told me, don't buy anything but hot, because you could get disease. So I saw this little boy, and I said, "Do you serve tea?" He said, "Yeah, tea. I said, come. So he came on there, and I said, "Well, give me 2 cups of tea in this canteen." And he put the 2 cups in. And then I said, "How much?" And he said, "Oh, that will be 3 rupees. I said, "Well, I don't have 3 rupees. I have 5 rupees. And he said, "I don't have any change." Well, in those days, it was pennies, you know, the difference. So I said, "Keep it." So he was just about to leave, and the elder gentleman grabbed him by the wrist, and he said, "You will not do this to this gentleman. This is a gentleman. You have to give him change." With that, the train started to go. So I said, "Let him go. It doesn't matter. I don't care." He said, No, that will not happen here." So I said, "What will we do?" He said, "When we get to the next station, he will get off, he will get change, he will give it to you, and then we will put him on the train going back home again." And that's what he did. I mean, it may not seem like anything, but it was so amazing, because every little thing that happened was new to me, you know, and and there were so many of these little constant things. At which point that happened, and then he said to me, I want you to lie down." I said, "I can't lie down. These are seats for 5 or 6 people." No. "You lie down, otherwise you will have no place to sleep tonight." So I said, "I can't do it." So I didn't lie down. And of course, a few minutes at the next station, the whole train was filled up, and I couldn't lie down if I wanted to. And he looked at me as if to say, "You see, if you had lied down, you'd have the whole place to yourself." Anyway, many other things happened on that train. And finally, the train came into Pondy.
I have.
So now we're rolling. Okay.
I already, you know, the first balcony. I did,
Yeah,
but didn't.
we're just now, you've just come in on the train, and now you're arriving at Pondicherry. So you arrive at Pondicherry, and do you have any, like, great white light, like... I know
No.
the energy's coming up through your body and you're heating up.
No, that happened when I first arrived on Indian soil in the south.
So now you're in Pondicherry.
Yeah, okay. I arrive in Pondy. It's dusk, it's evening. I think I told you that I already started telling you the following morning because I was going to meet the mother. And I'll go from the point of when this man, you know, came to get his place and I was in it. And so he recognized what I was there for and he accepted that. And as I told you, we became good friends afterwards. So we were both standing there. And in my mind was, is she really this remarkable being that everyone talks about? Because I'm not an unsophisticated person, and I know if someone says something often enough, you begin to believe that it has to be so. So, I mean, even if they talk about holy people or mystical people, you know, you just... So that was in my mind, and I thought, is she really going to be this remarkable being? And I had a number of other inward questions that I was asking. And that, well, I wanted to know whether she was a totally realized being. Did she know the answers to all the questions that anybody would ask? Is she a transformed being? Is her body already in a state of evolutionary process which is beyond where we are normally? And with all those questions, suddenly she appears. And she was the most remarkably beautiful looking figure. She was wearing a golden sari, which she had over her head like that, and it was a slight breeze, and there was a little flap in the, you know, the end of it. And she was made up. She had makeup on. She had a darkness, you know, around the eyes, the way football players do in a certain way, you know. And actually she used that because the sun is very difficult, you know, when you're standing in it. But she had some lipstick on. She had maybe rouge, I don't know. Anyway, she was remarkable looking. But more than what she looked like, what she vibrated was so powerful to me that all my questions disappeared in answer. Everything was answered without having to ask the questions. They were, in other words, when you're a baby and your mother is about to put you to her breast and you're very, very hungry and you're crying and everything, and then she puts you to the breast, you're totally happy, totally sad. Everything that you wanted, the mother's milk is feeding you. And in a sense, that's what I felt. I felt suddenly, as a baby, all my questions and all my wishes and all my hunger for everything suddenly was fed. And I stood there in absolutely remarkable, joyful fulfillment in that moment. And I knew, your little puppy wants to come in, and I knew that rather than question whether, I knew she did have the answers. And I knew it was my destiny to come, and I knew that I would find what I was in some way looking for. And she stayed on the balcony for 15 minutes, and at one point I felt that she looked directly at me, and she looked, and a little wisp of a smile sat on her face. And that I went to every morning from then on, because every morning she came from 6:15 to 6:30. And I began to become acquainted with her through these darshan meetings. And then but something quite remarkable happened a day or so later. In those days, Mother used to give out what was called prosperity to everyone. She would give a little piece of soap, and she would give them a towel, and she would give them a flower. And so one of the mornings I came, and she was seated in the outside in a tall back chair, and she was dressed magnificently again, and her arms were on this kind of lion chair, which was very important to me because my mother had one of those chairs in our foyer in Brooklyn where I grew up. And that chair was just like the chair Mother was sitting in. So I thought, isn't this remarkable that even the chair is alike? So as I was walking in there, a man by the name of, what was his name? The one that came here once early on. No. No. The one whose eye... M.P. Pandit, who was a dedicated disciple and been there for many years. And he saw me. There were very few Westerners in those days, very few. So he saw me and he said, "Oh, good morning, and why don't you sit here and I'll come back and introduce you to the mother." So I thought, oh my, that's, you know. So it was a group of people. There may have been 50 or 60 people sitting. Mother was in the front. And, you know, some of them were going up and, you know. And I sat there and sat there and sat there and sat there, and he didn't come. And I became a little bit impatient. And I also thought, I really don't need him to introduce me. I just want to go and see her, you know. So I got up and I walked up behind some other disciples. I was in Indian clothes, and came in front of her, and she looked at me like that, and she handed me a flower. And then as I left, she went like this. And I felt wonderful about it, but everyone else didn't understand why she would have made such a special face. It almost looked like she was angry with me, you know? Okay.
She had that look to her. There were times when she was in different states
absolutely
that would be confused with anger, whether it's a Kali state or a Maheshwari state.
Exactly. But for myself, it was glorious, you know. I was so close to her, this close away, and she had handed me something. So I started to walk. This is a cute story. I started to walk out. Just then, M.P. Pandit caught me by the arm. He said, "Didn't I tell you to wait? I was going to introduce you to Mother, and I am going to introduce you to Mother." I had just been introduced. So he took me around again. And then he came up to Mother with me in hand. And Mother was slightly hard of hearing. And he said, "Mother!" like that. You know, you could hear it for a mile away. He said, "Mother, this is Sammy Spanier. He's an American. He's come to see you." And Mother began to smile because she realized I'd just been there a minute or two before. She also probably knew a lot of things about me, and she knew a lot of things about MP Pottet and the whole experience. And I think that if she had been alone, she would have really made a lot of noise in the laughter. But she just put out this enormous smile, and I bowed a little in front of her, and he took me around, and that was my first official meeting, so to speak, with Mother. But I thought it was also a privilege that for some reasons the gods were being specially good to me. They let me see her twice, you know.